Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Reimagine 2021 virtual conference series. This is our ninth event, and this time we're going with the Game of Chains theme. So we're exploring alternatives in the space. We're exploring mainly people that are pushing the boundaries of innovation and launching new projects as opposed to projects that have been in the space for a very long time. I'm Roshan Mirajkar, one of your hosts for today. And I'm very excited to be joined here by a new guest. With me here today, I have Yonatan Sompolinsky. He's the founding scientist at DAGlabs, and he's a postdoc at Harvard University. Yonatan, very excited to have you here today. And just to start off, I think it would be really great if you could tell us how did you get into the space, and really excited to learn more about DAGlabs.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I began my journey into crypto around 2013 or 14. I was admitted to graduate program in the Hebrew University, computer science. I was recommended by the head of the school to join Aviv Zohar. He was a new assistant professor back at the time. And he basically suggested I work on a project called Bitcoin. Frankly, I found it boring and too practical for my taste at the time. But then after a few months, I saw the light and went back to Aviv. And under his supervision, I started a project lab, a lab project which came into the Ghost protocol paper. And since then, I've been working on scaling Nakamoto consensus, security analysis of Nakamoto of different protocols, incentives in the system, some game theory. Basically, that's what I've been doing since.
Yes, and it's really exciting to talk to you, especially because I don't come across many researchers in particular in the space. A lot of different people developing things or have ideas, and I think you're going to give us a good inside look at kind of the structure of a lot of these blockchain protocols and what really matters. Tell us a little bit about, what exactly is DAGlabs, and like what are the 2 or 3 most important things that you all focus on just on a daily basis?
Yeah, so DAGlabs is the main entity, the funding of core devs of Kaspa. Kaspa is a decentralized project. We have a testnet already. It's a new platform, which is based on the DAG protocols that I've co-authored in the Hebrew University. The main premise or the main premises of Kaspa is optimizing for speed, optimizing for transaction fees, and manipulation resistance of transactions. So what Kaspa is aiming to be is a transaction sequencing layer for crypto, specifically for DeFi. I can elaborate on the meaning of transaction sequencing, what exactly that means. In general, this is what Kaspa is aiming for. This is not replacing the entire DeFi stack. We're not trying to kill ETH or something of that sort. We are trying to replace one of its core functionalities, which is the transaction ordering, transaction sequencing, utilizing DAG protocols, which we've co-authored.
Got it. So you guys are trying to make it better, so to speak. And can you also explain some of the differences between, I think people get a lot confused by like layer 1, layer 2. So are you building like a layer 2 technology, or is it like a new layer 1?
The terminology is a very contentious issue. Everyone wants to say they're layer 1 or layer 2. Others claim they are sidechains. I won't fall into this pitfall, So Kaspa is an independent layer 1 and should be considered a sidechain to Ethereum. Others will call it a layer 2. There are reasons to emphasize the sidechain because layer 2 is more natively embedded into the system, whereas a sidechain has its own security, which is its own security and its own performance. So being layer 2 means you're bottlenecked with part of Ethereum's performance limitations. And DAGA sidechains mean you can improve over Ethereum's performance, while at the same time you do have to bootstrap your own security. This is why it's more fair to call it a sidechain or a side platform.
Got it. Yeah, and the reason why I asked is there's a lot of debates in the space, and I think many people, especially the new people entering, even new developers, get really confused as some of the terminology that people use. So getting a little bit into Kaspa, tell us like what exactly Kaspa is and why are you choosing to launch it now? Is this something that you've been working on the past couple of years?
Yeah, we've been working on Kaspa for the last years. Kaspa is, the timing is very important. Now is there are a few events in the crypto ecosystem which are realizing now, and for which Kaspa is a very prime candidate. Mainly the question of what happens to Ethereum when Ethereum transitions into a rollup centric roadmap, what happens to other chains which are incorporated into DeFi ecosystem alongside Ethereum, and what are the problems that Ethereum does not solve, neither in its current version nor its future versions, like Ethereum 2.0 or the rollup centric version of Ethereum. So focusing on what Kaspa is a transaction sequencing system, which means where does the agreement on who came first, which transaction came first. So when you send a transaction, let's say you're a Wall Street trader, you send a transaction to the system. You want to know that the transaction came in very fast. You don't want to wait. You don't want to wait 15 seconds, let alone wait a minute. It's eternity in internet systems, in our 2021 terms. So you want the transaction to be processed very fast, and you want it to be manipulation free. These are basically the two requirements of a trader, and you want the fee to be low. Now, focusing first on the speed and the manipulation resistance, Ethereum has its own design, and the design was not, back at the time when Ethereum was designed, it wasn't focused on the ordering in a sophisticated manner because it was just the beginning. Now, what happens is that the system is very mature, the market is very mature, and now you have flash bots, and what is called MEV or flash bots, which are entities that manipulate your transactions and reorder them inside the block. Now, as a trader, you can either join them or suffer from them. So Flashbot is both a solution and a problem. As I wouldn't say it's a rare occurrence that someone creates a problem and a solution. Now, this is what Kaspa is focused on. We want to create a high-speed transaction sequencing, which will allow you to both get very fast confirmation and get an assurance that your transaction is not manipulated and reordered.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting when you say like something like a flashbot is both a problem and a solution. And one of my quick questions is, so do you think Kaspa is going to be better suited for like enterprise applications where front running and having things in order, no manipulation matter? Or is it also for like, I guess, mainstream DeFi where people don't even know the terms that you're talking about here today? Like, I'm glad you're covering them because it's more education for them.
I think the problems with front running will become mainstream. DeFi traders are increasingly becoming more and more aware of the reordering problem, the front running, back running, sandwich attacks. Admittedly, it's currently in the awareness of high frequency traders. So people that trade at least a few times a day, usually they know that there's this risk You know it from Wall Street. You know that there's algo trading and micro trading in Wall Street, and you know people try to have their Wi-Fi connected high speed to Wall Street backbone system in order to be able to front run transactions. So it's not something new. It's not something that traders that are new to crypto can't imagine. The question is how can it be solved? Because in the decentralized system, everyone needs to see the transaction before it's processed. That's at least the design of Ethereum. This is the main problem. In Ethereum, when you send a transaction, before it's mined, everyone sees it. So if it takes, let's say in Ethereum, it takes 15 seconds at least for your transaction to be mined. In these 15 seconds, everyone, and especially bots, internet bots, can look at your transaction and decide whether they can manipulate it or maybe just replace it. Let's say you had an arbitrage opportunity. The bot can simply read your transaction, simulate what it does, and say, okay, this is a very good transaction. Let's kick it out of the mempool and let's mine this transaction for our own sake. This is a very classical problem. So crypto traders are probably, mainstream crypto traders will be aware of that if they're not aware of that today.
I see. So is it a problem of blockchain infrastructure, or does it have something to do with like the actual technological, I guess, code in Ethereum that allows it for you to even do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, not to get too technical, it's a problem mainly of leader-based consensus, which means it's a problem when the consensus is too slow. I'm oversimplifying it, but for the sake of our viewers, when the consensus is too slow and every round you need to agree on what happened in the previous round. So in this delay, you have this front running capability. So take for instance Bitcoin or Ethereum's protocol. Because it's a chain of blocks, every chain block, you need to wait a few seconds. In Ethereum's case, it's 15 seconds. In Bitcoin, it's, as you know, 10 minutes, in order to ensure that all the network agrees on what happened in the previous round. What was the identity of the chain block? This is, even 15 seconds is a very long time, which gives many people the opportunity to manipulate your transaction. So any consensus system that is slow would suffer from that. If you want to solve it, you have to introduce the speed. You have to introduce a mechanism that circumvents the mempool, meaning that when you send your transaction, you send it to a miner that mines it without exposing it to the entire network before it's mined. This is just imagine you're a Wall Street trader. You don't want to publish your transaction to everyone, and only then it will be processed in the backbone, because someone can just front run you easily. You want to send it secretly to a single operator within the system, and only then, you want it to be exposed to everyone only after it was processed. Now, this is not to say speed is enough. If you want to protect yourself from the miner, from the operator itself, from the single operator to which you're sending your transaction, additional crypto magic should happen. So this is not to say speed and parallelism of the consensus is sufficient to protect users and crypto traders from front running and such attacks, but it is a necessary condition. So this is why Kaspa is focusing on asynchronous consensus or parallel consensus. So imagine we get to 100 blocks per second. 100 blocks per second, without getting too technical, it means that I can send my transaction or even part of my transaction to specific miners in the system. And within less than a second, my transaction will be processed before it was propagated to the network. So this is the core manipulation feature that we're focusing on.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that, because I've always heard people talk about, transactions per second just for finality or just for the sake of transactions. But I really like how you're covering, like you're really doing it for a specific reason. And, now to get into DeFi a bit, because I think that's what's been happening the whole past year, NFTs as well. But I think DeFi has really taken the storm, disrupted a lot of markets, like new financial products. So, from your view, what, like from a user standpoint, without getting too technical, like what are some important considerations that you find important or that you spend time on? I know you covered some, but like what are some things that people who are just experimenting with these DeFi protocols that maybe they don't realize, but they should know in a couple months or something like that?
Yeah, so today or a couple of months will be very different because of the whole transitioning of DeFi, of Ethereum to layer 2. Today, most of the things are abstracted away from the user, apart from of course, the speed, the fee, the high fee, which can skyrocket at time of congestion, and manipulation, which we covered. Coming forward in the next, I would say half a year, maybe slightly more, but not much more, there is an entire transitioning of Ethereum to layer 2. With this transitioning, what will happen is, maybe not immediately, but the user will suffer from this fragmentation, meaning today as a crypto user, as a DeFi user, especially if you're a bit sophisticated, you know that you can take a loan, from this contract, invest it in this contract, hedge yourself with a third contract within the same transaction. This is the amazing invention, which has no parallel in the traditional system. It's very, very unique. You can just simulate the entire flow of your transaction before doing it and playing with all these contracts like a Lego box. The thing that will happen with Ethereum's transitioning to layer 2 is that different contracts will live in different areas in the system, in different shards. And this will become a bit more problematic because then this basically harms what's called composability, the main invention of Ethereum, arguably. And then the user will need to operate more within the shard, within the area, within the rollup instance, if you may, that its assets are locked in. And then this becomes a pain point for the user because the user won't be able to do in the same transaction atomically the loaning, the loaning of the borrowing of the money from one contract and investing it in the second one, unless these contracts live in the same shard. This is the main problem that Ethereum and DeFi users will feel. On the positive side, entities, which we can call market makers or liquidity providers, will presumably bridge the gap, which means that as a user, you will interact with gateways or with entities that will try to make it smoother for you and provide the service of abstracting this away. They will run the nodes in the different shards and communicate your transaction across different rollups or shards. I can't say this will solve it indefinitely. Absolutely, it will alleviate some pain points, but users will need to start becoming more aware of the, unfortunately, of the backbone of the system.
Got it. So yeah, as time progresses, they're going to have to maybe understand the infrastructure a bit, just like we kind of do in the traditional stock market or like 401k. Everyone at least understands the structure of the kind of the risks of what they're getting themselves into. Like no one's afraid of getting front run when you're doing your 401k or just stock trading. But I guess inherently it does still happen. I know we talked a lot about like some of the issues and the important considerations. But just to bring it back, I want to remind all our users that I want to talk a little bit about the Ghost protocol because correct me if I'm wrong. This was in Ethereum's original roadmap. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Ghost protocol is? Like, how long have you been working on it, and why is it so important to you?
Okay, so Ghost is not so important to me. It was my first baby, my first research product. with Aviv Zohar. Ghost is basically the first protocol which questioned the longest chain rule that Satoshi Nakamoto invented. And at the time, again, we didn't fully acknowledge the impact of Ghost. By the time that Ghost was embedded in Ethereum's roadmap, we already came up with an alternative, more enhanced version of Ghost in several papers we published, Spectre Protocol, Phantom Protocol, and others. And to understand what Ghost is, or what this entire family of protocols is about, just imagine again the longest chain rule, which, okay, maybe people are not too familiar with the details, but by and large, people understand that the way that the Bitcoin or Ethereum chain grow is they extend the chain in rounds, and if in case of any fork, the longest chain is maintained, and the rest of the branches of this ledger are discarded. So if there's a fork, contentious or accidental, this is what will happen. Now, this mechanism, while it secures the system, it does require that every node in the system contributes to the most updated part of the ledger. This is the main part. In current consensus protocol systems, in crypto, before the protocol makes the next progress, the next round, it has to agree on the previous round. You don't want the honest network to be fragmented between different forks. So this is why Bitcoin and Ethereum as well are slow in their extension of the ledger. So in Ethereum, the next ledger will be extended only once every 15 seconds. Again, this is to ensure that the entire miner network extends the same version of the ledger. You don't want to have forks or disagreements. Now, with Ghost, what we figured out was that this need to delay the progress of the system is caused by the longest chain rule of Satoshi. But you can design different protocols which select the chain in the ledger, or extract consensus and consistency from the ledger in different manners. So Ghost was a different protocol in which, if there are too many forks, if there are many forks in the system, you wouldn't choose the longest chain. You would choose rather the heaviest chain. How to define heaviest? Go read the paper. But in general, this is a more sophisticated procedure to agree on the chain of the honest majority, which allows you to speed up block creation and suffer forks. Now, Ghost didn't come free. It had several problems, which were at a trade-off, in trade-off with its solutions. This is why we designed the block DAG paradigm. And the block DAG paradigm, from a bird eye view, is let all miners mine blocks as fast as possible. So imagine 10 blocks per second, 100 blocks per second. And then, okay, there's a big mess, right? There's many forks in the system. Obviously, miners will not form one clean chain. There will be a big graph. We call this graph a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. And this block DAG is progressing very fast. Of course, there's a catch here. What's the catch? The catch is that this messy DAG contains conflicts, double spends, or other sorts of conflicts. And the way you solve them is you design an ordering protocol of the DAG in a way that recovers the consistency. So without getting into details, DAG protocols are a way to speed up block creation, let the blocks form a big graph, a growing graph that can have conflicts, and that's okay. It has conflict, it has many forks, and the DAG protocol orders the transactions, orders the blocks in a way that extracts consistency and ensures agreement. So visually, you can just imagine a blockchain with many chains, many branches growing in parallel, merging and diverting, and then some magic happens and every node agrees on the ordering of transactions, even though, despite the high speed of the system. This is in general what the DAG protocols are about.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I don't even think many people have heard of DAGs and how they're very different to blockchain. And what I wanted to ask you about that is, are DAGs better suited for DeFi? Or do you think it will continue? Do you think Ethereum will continue to dominate? Or like we've also seen kind of forks of Ethereum, like Binance Chain. Like, what do you, when you think of DeFi, and you obviously are researching some of, you're kind of seeing the inside of what's actually happening in these smart contracts, or you have more knowledge there. So what do you think is better suited for the future of DeFi? And you can answer this in terms of like security, or I wanted to ask you about governance in a couple of minutes as well, but you can answer it how you want.
Yeah, sure. So there are several questions here. What will be the future of DAGs? What will be the future of Ethereum? What will be the future of DeFi? I will try to provide a holistic answer on those. So what I think from my current perspective, and my perspective, has changed with the flows of the market, admittedly. So what I think currently is happening is that the DeFi ecosystem is fragmenting, and it's centered around Ethereum. It will presumably remain centered around Ethereum, but more as a community and ecosystem, maybe identity, but less on the main chain of Ethereum. The main chain of Ethereum, that's my prediction, will continue to be the settlement layer of DeFi. So but users will find themselves visiting and engaging more with layer 2 or side chains than with the Ethereum main chain. And only when they want to exit the system, they will need to engage with the main chain. And to give you a perspective, there's a project called Matic, which was rebranded into Polygon. And it has risen and got lots of traction. What was Polygon's vision? They boldly said, we want to turn Ethereum into a multi-chain world. And because they had this bold statement, which they believe Ethereum will be fragmented, this is my interpretation. This has attracted lots of devs and projects to cooperate with them, because having a monolithic design where everyone needs to engage and operate everything on the main chain is not scalable. It did provide composability and did enable these amazing inventions, but it won't last. To the question, where do DAGs fit into this ecosystem? What I think will happen, continuing the notion that Ethereum will remain the main chain, the settlement layer, I think what will happen is that different aspects of the system will be served by different layers. So that the final settlement, the logic handling, especially in case of disputes, will happen on Ethereum's main chain. But the day-to-day operation, my prediction is, and it's already happening, will happen in different chains. And these different chains will have bridges, liquidity providers, connecting them to the main chain in case of dispute. But other than that, people will use different layers. Now, what layer should the user choose? So users that are not informed will typically just go by their current service provider. If they're using MetaMask, they will go with the decision, the first option that MetaMask, the default option of MetaMask, for instance. The informed user will ask themselves, what are the properties of the different layers that I'm choosing? So some layers will provide immediate finality, but in a more centralized manner. Some layers like Kaspa will provide you very fast inclusion, instant inclusion in the ledger, in the ordering, slower finality, but higher manipulation resistance. So every layer will provide the users with different properties. And the informed users, and supposedly then the herd, will go after the layer that provides the trade-off that this sub-community needs.
Yeah, thank you for answering all my questions. I think that was a great bite that a great sound bite that a lot of people can learn from in the way that you explained it. And even me, I haven't heard too many implementations of DAGs or even the actual value of these different things. And something that you were talking about, I kind of had a deeper question about, and that's the question about governance. Do you think that governance in the current state of, I guess, Ethereum and maybe some other forks, do you think it's like, it's sustainable and it's actually working? Like, based on what you're saying, I'm thinking, is there a way you can even front run the governance a bit, like vote on something faster or manipulate something there to your advantage? I'm not sure. Like, what do you think is the current state, or have you seen something kind of disruptive or dangerous like that related to governance?
That's a great question. I haven't given it thought, to be frank. I think the governance systems that are designed around or on top of Ethereum are not, to my knowledge, are not sensitive to real-time manipulations, rather to larger timescales. That being said, with the system transitioning to being high speed, whether through Kaspa or through other systems, I believe the contracts that implement governance will need to secure themselves. Meaning, the contract designer, the dev that's writing the smart contract, should be aware of the I would say attack space or the manipulation space of users that are very sophisticated and can front run votes or manipulate things in real time. And they will they will need to design governance contracts that are manipulation resistant. But I don't think it's unique to governance. I think any contract developer will need to be aware of this new maturity of the market, the development of these flashbots and other manipulations.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense to me, that it's not just related to governance, and it's a probably really important consideration for the developers out there, because just from starting out with like even students in schools, they don't really learn that, and like they're also the next generation of people entering the space. Like they don't know too much about developing on open source standards. So do you have any like advice for developers that are converting into the space? Like what are like two of your important considerations that you think are above all else when people are developing these applications and forking things?
People that are coming to the space, yeah, it depends on the type of contribution you want to make. But I would say there are two general things I would look for, which might be at odds with one another. One is the dev tools, having sufficient dev tools and SDKs so that I don't write everything from scratch and build everything from scratch. Rather focus on my special contribution and the thing I want to achieve uniquely. And the other is the ability to be a game changer. As a new person to crypto, I would want to join an area which is a blue ocean or something that I can shine in, rather than provide an incremental contribution to an existing ecosystem or to an existing niche. I do want to mention, going back to governance, that there is a different consideration that's going to happen with this fragmentation of the system, and it's related to governance but not identical to it. And this is the social consensus around coins. So what I mean by that is when you have a token that's represented in different shards, you will need to decide whether this is the same token or not, whether its economical value is the same or not, whether it should have a one-to-one peg. So for instance, let's say we implement MakerDAO, a stable token on one shard, and we have it on another shard as well. We have two implementations of it, two running implementations of it, two sets of users. And then for some reason, one shard was compromised. So it collapsed. Some of the auction design of it didn't work out, and then but the other shard remained stable. How should the liquidity providers behave in this scenario? How should the exchanges behave in this scenario? You have this informal social consensus of exchanges and market makers around the same token that is supposedly lives in different shards, and that lives in different shards, but it's supposedly the same token. But you will need to decide at some point whether you call it the same token, or whether you say, no, this is not Maker, this is not DAI, this is a DAI in this rollup, and I will ascribe to it a different value. So these are the kinds of maybe governance or maybe social consensus questions that will arise.
Yeah, I really love what you just said about the social. Can you repeat that again? What did you say about the social coins and the governance related there?
Yeah, I mentioned social consensus because the term social consensus goes to say that you can't solve things, you can't solve this problem, or you can't even define them without analyzing what will happen to the, I would say, humans or the operators behind the protocol. So it's not a matter of designing a new technology or coming up with a new research or a better consensus, a formal consensus. It's about understanding what will happen to the people or the economic entities that will engage with the protocol, and we'll need to decide what happens. So this is roughly under the umbrella of social consensus, and you can't fully predict what will happen there, but you can focus on that and try to facilitate social consensus across the leading entities of these projects.
Yeah, no, that's just a great term. I'm going to start using that term. And I think it also balances both parties in the ecosystem right now, people that are on the extreme of actually participating in governance through voting. And then you have new people that are just buying these coins, so to speak, but they're just now learning that you can actually facilitate other economic activity, participation, and like staking. I just find it very different than what you can do in our traditional world right now. And one of my last questions to you is actually what you just kind of touched on a bit. It is about I guess the game theory elements of just blockchains in general. From your point of view, how much does the evolution of, I guess, technology, like new ways to make things more efficient, affect some of the game theory models? Because I find that a lot of the projects are successful right now, or they've been doing good in the past year because they have like crazy game theory attributes that I don't know if it's sustainable. Like some of these yields that you're getting, or there's no really repercussions like what you were talking about earlier. They're just building on another chain. But yeah, from your perspective, like how much does technology affect some of the game theory elements? Anything we should be aware of?
Yeah, definitely. What's interesting from a research perspective and academic perspective is the focus of the community. So the research community was focused, I would say, in the until maybe 2019 on the application and the infrastructure layer, including myself. The building a faster infrastructure, building more robust protocols, making utilizing cryptographic primitives to scale up the system. This was the main focus of the research community, I think, until 2019 or so. And then what happened was that with the maturing and development of DeFi, the entire focus shifted to the application layer with new conferences and new ideas around DeFi, around Uniswap, around incentives between these different contracts. And you kind of see the researchers starting to publish papers in this field. And lately, what happened is that these two fields became connected. And the way they are connected is that the game theory of the application layer is impacting the consensus layer, the infrastructure layer, because the infrastructure layer, the miners, still have, they are the operators of the game. So if previously people were more interested in how miners can do selfish mining attack or double spend attack, these very basic and straightforward, to some extent, attacks. Now the focus is, okay, let's think what happens to the miners when they become aware of the transactions, when they are sophisticated enough, or they use sophisticated enough agents to reason about how they can manipulate the system. So suddenly you have these very weird results, game theoretic results, which shed light, sometimes not in a positive manner on the system. For instance, you get a result wherein just for the sake of curiosity, you get results like if one miner is incentivized to do a front running, then others are yet more incentivized to do the front running, and you have this cascade, and the entire system, the entire incentives cascade into a total destruction of consensus. This is called the instability of consensus in face of whale transactions. So this is a very unique phenomena, because typically you have, like in traditional finance, you have the operators, the backbone is stable, and the game is between the different traders. And now here you have a system where the traders play the game not only against themselves, but also against the operators. This is really fascinating, and the research is just starting now. And this is my main focus now. This is the main thing that's interesting to me now. In connection to Kaspa and in DeFi in general, because I think the market is going there. Definitely the research community is going there. And you see also projects like Flashbot that are definitely, going around the same topic. This is to me the main thing that every researcher should be focused on.
That was such an awesome explanation. I was just very interested just hearing you speak about it. Love the way you just broke it down. It's just having me think about like how different this system is. Like it enables a lot of new things, but you're totally right that the same things that kind of empower you, so to speak, going back to what you said at the beginning, can also come back and be a problem. I think the only better way to end this off is to have you kind of give us some ways that we can, people can reach out to your project or reach out to you.
Oh, sure. So my handle in Twitter is #DAG, and I would love to. People can direct message me freely. You can join the Kaspa testnet by going to the Discord of KaspaNet. There's a KaspaNet GitHub. If you're a developer or a researcher, feel free to contribute and engage with the core devs or become one yourself. So I would say Twitter, Discord, and GitHub. Yeah,
awesome.
And Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah, Yonatan, thank you so much for your time here today. And it was really interesting having you on the Reimagine 2021 series. You covered a lot of interesting in-depth topics, and yeah, I look forward to seeing more developments at Kaspa, and hopefully hope to talk to you in a few more months and see what you're up to.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and have a great conference.
Thank you. I'll let you all tune back into Reimagine 2021 version 9.